Do you care whether the things you believe are actually true? You should. Holding false beliefs can be harmful. Let's start with an example from my area of expertise, FDA regulatory law. The ACA's position is the same as every accredited medical association in the United States. The evidence is overwhelmingly clear and shows that FDA-approved vaccines are both safe and effective. Despite this evidence, RFK Jr., the new Secretary of Health and Human Services, has spent decades promoting false, fear-mongering information about vaccines, particularly the measles vaccine. His beliefs put entire communities at risk. And wouldn't you know it, sure as clockwork, measles, once nearly eradicated in the United States, has made a massive resurgence. As we speak, there is a huge and growing outbreak among children in the ACA's home state of Texas, where vaccination rates are historically low. All because of false beliefs people hold due to the lies pushed by RFK Jr. and his ilk. The risk here is as clear as it is horrific. While most cases of measles resolve in a few weeks, parents have to ask themselves, even if my child survives, which is not a guarantee, do I want them to stay in a hospital, possibly for weeks, struggling to breathe, in pain and in fear for their life, possibly going blind or deaf or even suffering brain damage, all because of my false belief, which could have so easily been debunked? I hope not. So, if we can all agree on that, can we also not agree that the same principle applies to religious beliefs? While they may seem harmless on the surface, many religious teachings have real-world consequences that can cause psychological damage, ruin families, drive people into financial ruin, shape laws, influence policies, and affect personal freedoms. Just as RFK Jr.'s false beliefs about vaccines put public health at risk, religious beliefs, when accepted without question, can lead to discrimination, scientific denial, and even violence and death. I urge you to examine your religious beliefs with the same level of scrutiny you apply in any other belief in life. Because if we care whether or not our beliefs about medicine and science are true, shouldn't we care just as much about the truth of our religious beliefs? If you disagree and think that religious beliefs are somehow exempted from requiring evidence, call us, because the show starts now.
Welcome to the show, everybody. Today is March 16th, 2025. I am your host, Justin. You might know me elsewhere as Deconstruction Zone. I'm joined by the handsome and intelligent cross-examiner. How are you doing today, Graham?
Oh, I'm doing well. Thanks, Justin. You didn't have to lie to people right off the bat.
I leave lying up to the religious text. You.
No, I am thrilled to be able to be here with you. I've seen your work elsewhere, and you are a force to be reckoned with. So I am grabbing some popcorn and waiting for the show to start.
Well, I would add much to the same. So I'm excited for today's episode. And before we dig in, we have some announcements and some preliminary readings. The Atheist Experience is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. We want to thank all of you viewers, donators, volunteers, and those in the atheist community for helping us to make our first ever 24-hour live stream and fundraiser a huge success. Woohoo. Thanks to your generous donations, we raised over $10,000.
Wow.
That's a huge congratulations to the ACA community. Incredible work all around. But don't worry, if you were not able to join us for the fundraiser live stream, you can still donate at tiny.cc/amplify-ACA or on our website at the atheist-community.org. Again, thank you so much for contributing to our very first and successful campaign. We are so excited to continue all of our great work because of our support from all the viewers and members of the community.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I was actually watching the stream while I was at work.
Nice, nice.
And then I was able to get on afterwards. So it was a good time.
Wonderful. Yeah, I'm so happy that they came up with that idea because $10,000 goes a long way for a nonprofit.
Oh, it really does. And there's so many people, like so many volunteers that help to make the show possible that it warms my heart that so many people are involved in this project. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Let's dig into our questions of the week. Before we get started, we want to talk about last week's question of the week. Last week's was, let's see, worst thing to give up for Lent. The worst thing to give up for Lent. And here were three of the favorites chosen by Johnny P. Angel.
It's
and
his
the
fault,
third,
folks.
I would blame, definitely blame Johnny. Coming in bronze from Mirandans Burger. I apologize if I didn't pronounce that name correctly.
Miranda Rensberger. I'm only clarifying because they contribute on a weekly basis, so I want to make sure we get them right. It's written all in one string in our notes,
right.
But that's I recognize that.
Yeah, Miranda Rensberger. There we go. I appreciate that. And the worst thing to give up for Lent is orgasms.
That's right.
That's I can't agree more. I'm confused why that's not at number one.
Right.
Coming in at silver from Zileros X says the worst thing to give up for Lent is my humanity. Well, good thing if you're an atheist, you don't have to worry about that too much. And in first place, getting the gold medal from Mendelian says the worst thing to give up for Lent is smoking, drinking, amphetamines, and sniffing glue.
I'm not sure. Do you get that one, Justin? I'm old enough to get that one. This is a reference to the movie Airplane.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Yes.
That makes sense.
So very, very good. Yes.
Okay.
The line was the guy in the control tower kept escalating what he was, it looked like it was picked the wrong week to give up smoking, and then every time he came back to him, the running gag was it got worse and worse. I couldn't agree more. That's a great answer.
That is definitely a great answer, deserving of the gold medal.
Yes.
Now the prompt for this week is complete the sentence. It was really petty when God blank. So insert your answer into the blank. It was really petty when God blank. Graham, did you already have an answer for this week's?
I didn't. I forgot to check what it was, but I have one on the spot here. I hope it's decent. It was really petty when God cursed all of humanity for all time for falling for a trick that he set up with that apple. So that's pretty petty in my book.
That's crazy petty. I pulled out a familiar passage from Mark and Luke when Jesus curses a fig tree. It says, on the following day, this is Mark 11:12, when they came from Bethany, he was hungry. Seeing in the distance a fig tree in leaf, he went to see whether perhaps he would find anything on it. When he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, because it was not the season for figs. And he said to it, may no one ever eat fruit from you ever again. Because why would an all-knowing entity not realize that a fig tree out of season wouldn't have figs?
As soon as you said the fig thing, I'm like, oh, that's the winner right there. Like, we should just shut down the competition. Cursing a fig tree for not bearing figs when you are the master of the universe is definitely
crazy.
Oh man,
it was all for show. I'm sure there's a hermeneutic to justify it. Right?
Oh no, absolutely. It was all metaphorical or something.
It's always a metaphor if you don't like what it says.
Yes, exactly.
Well, we got a couple callers in the queue already. Let's see who we've got in here. We've got Jim says, compare Jesus to guys like Robin Hood, King Arthur, or Johnny Appleseed. So we'll grab Jim and bring him in. Jim, how you doing?
Hi guys,
Jim.
how you doing?
Doing well.
The reason I compare Jesus to guys like Robin Hood or King Arthur is because much like Robin Hood or King Arthur, I believe Jesus to be a legendary character.
Mm-hmm.
Someone who might have existed, but then they stretched the truth when they finally wrote everything down decades after the fact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think there's, sort of a range of possibilities. Either everything in the Bible is literally true about Jesus, and I think the evidence is not there to support that conclusion. And on the other end, there's there never was a Jesus at all ever, and this is completely a work of fiction. And then in the middle, there's a bunch of variations of it's amalgam of a lot of different people. He was around when there were a lot of itinerant rabbis preaching, and so they sort of took the best parts. Who knows, right? We don't know. That's part of the problem. So much like King Arthur, there's a lot of people out there who think that King Arthur really existed, as did Robin Hood, and it takes some work to show people that that's probably not true. I don't know, Justin, just to clarify for our audience, the reason Justin could go straight to the scripture like that for the figs is you went to seminary and were training for all of this for many years. Isn't that correct?
That's true. Yeah, I went to Bible college and then seminary. So I completed my Master's of Divinity at an evangelical seminary, not
okay, asterisk.
not a state university, an actual evangelical Christian seminary.
Right. So did they touch on the historicity of Jesus there and dive deeply into it, sufficiently deep, or did you not cover that?
So that's actually a really good question, because when you're in seminary, it's kind of a given that Jesus was a real person unless you take like a special course in apologetics. And believe it or not, a lot of people in seminary aren't taking apologetics courses because like you're just trying to get your training for ministry done. So there's actually a large percentage of the people at seminary that are already in ministry and they've been there for a long time. And they're like, I actually need to get certified for what I'm doing.
Wow.
And so diving really deep into apologetics and historicity sometimes just isn't really the thing they came there for.
Let's not argue and bicker about whether or not any of this is true. I need to get the dollars. So give me my certification. Is that, am I hearing that correctly? Much. Okay. All right. Good.
That's basically it. In fact, we had people that would come to do their Doctor of Divinity, which was, it's kind of a joke in seminary because the Doctorate of Divinity is like the pay me more degree.
Right.
Because you're not really doing like a full PhD, like someone who's studying like the Bible in depth, like someone who's looking at like an actual PhD. It's more of a professional degree.
Sure.
And so like a doctorate of ministry typically is not all that useful in making you more of a scholar. It's more useful in getting you a better paycheck because now theoretically you're a better pastor.
And you can put the DR in front of your name.
You got it. Yeah, it looks really good on paper.
Yeah. So, Jim, I think you hit on something that we can all agree on. Have you run into any experiences where you find people adamantly trying to prove that Jesus exists to you, or are you not in that game where you don't run into those sorts of people?
I've run into a few. But, you know, again, one of the reasons I also threw in Johnny Appleseed is very simple. There was a John Chapman. He did exist. Mm-hmm. Yes, he planted apple orchards. But but did he actually wear a burlap sack for clothing and put a pot on his head? That's where you kind of say, yeah, maybe that's the legend.
Yeah, you know, exactly. George Washington existed. We have a tremendous amount of evidence for that. We also know that a lot of people for hundreds of years believed that he chopped down a cherry tree and could not tell a lie. And we know that's probably just made up. So, yeah, like anybody, the figures can become bigger than life.
That's true. And I'm not a full myther. I think he was a real person too. But I agree with you. I think most of what we're reading about him would be classified as mythology, even if there was a real person in there somewhere.
Yep. Cool. Well, thanks, Jim.
You know, to me, like the gospel. Okay. Great. You guys take care.
Sorry. Cheers. Have a great one.
You're talking about you, but yeah, thank you.
You too.
All right. So we've got a theist in the queue. Goes by Mike. Let me get Mike loaded up. Mike's from South Carolina, and he's asking, how is using pronouns different from the fable, The Emperor's New Clothes, which is a really good fable, actually, a really good story. Mm-hmm. So, Mike, you're on the line now. You care to share with us a little bit?
Oh, yeah, sure. just so that everybody's familiar with what I'm talking about, it's not The Emperor's New Groove, the movie that came out like
an underrated film. I think it's pretty darn good. But anyway, so Emperor's new clothes, just to summarize for people, Emperor comes out, says, "Don't you love all my new clothes?" And somebody had sold him magic clothes or something like that. And he was, in fact, naked. And everybody's like, "Oh, yes, amazing. These clothes are incredible," because they don't want to be excluded from the crowd. As Tim mentions in his great song, "Thank You, God," it is an Emperor News Clothes style fear of exclusion, but also because they want to win favor with the king. And it takes the child, the simple, straightforward child, to say, "But he's naked." And then everybody's like, "Oh, okay, the jig is up." That's the story. And you're asking, if I'm understanding you, how is that different from when people use pronouns? Can you expand on your question there?
Yeah, that's a good summary of it as far as the movie goes. Only the people that were worthy could see the clothes, and that was the deal. So everybody wanted, "Oh yeah, I'm worthy. Yeah, I can see it." That's how it went down. But how it relates to pronouns is there's, I'll talk about this, but there's a lot of similarities there. Whereas we've got to, agree that people can say whatever they want for pronouns. And I've listened to some of your explanations, Cross-Examiner, as far as why we should use pronouns. It's just to be nice is a lot of it. And the problem with that is you're saying, so I'm talking to you, Cross-Examiner, but I'm curious what Justin has to say as well. And maybe this is old information, but you were just saying, "Hey, we should all use pronouns because it's nice." And what have you got to lose? Is that still where you're at, or you?
I would clarify a few terms there. First, I wouldn't say use pronouns, because we use pronouns every day. You use pronouns. You've already used pronouns probably 20 times in this conversation. But I think what we're talking about is using people's preferred pronouns. Is that what we're talking about?
We're talking about, people using whatever pronoun they want instead of what is grammatically correct. And
okay, so before we get there, because I think you're baking some assumptions in by making that, so talking about grammatically correct, because I'll tell you, looking down the road, I think you're making an argument from definition, which is never a winning argument, but we'll get there. So my position on this is, if we are talking about using the pronoun that another person has asked me to use when addressing them, then yes, my position is no skin off my back. I will definitely use their pronoun and call them what they want to be called, because it's the polite thing to do. That's the first part of my analysis. But there is a second part, and that part is there are mountains of evidence that show that the gender you identify with, i.e. gender, the way you express yourself, all of those sorts of things, is different than biological sex. Those are two different things. So in my mind, gender is how you identify yourself and how you present yourself and how you would prefer for people to address you. So when gender is involved, I will certainly be courteous and use the preferred pronoun of the person that I am speaking with. I'm speaking slowly because I want to make sure that the terms are clear here. Justin, before we kick it back to Mike, do you have any different approach there?
Well, I mean, I think mine is basically the same as yours, but maybe I could provide a good example. I've known a couple people that actually got their names legally changed. Would it be offensive if your aunt or your sister or your brother or somebody got their name legally changed and then you just refuse to call them by their new legal name? Like, why would you choose to do that? Like, it's just kind of an insult to them, right? Now, as it turns out, I think, your gender expression is a little bit different than just putting a new name on, because we're talking about someone's outward expression. And when we're talking about gender, I think these are actually pretty complex issues. And I want to take you back to the moment when I kind of realized it wasn't as black and white as what a lot of people want it to be, which is, I was a teenager and I was just learning, we had to do sex ed in high school. I was literally just learning what kind of, like, how you figure out if somebody, has a classification, like what causes someone to develop in the womb to eventually be a male or eventually be a female or to develop certain sex hormones. And what in the world happens when you've got a human being that's got multiple sex hormones? There used to be a name for it. It's kind of out of vogue. But when I was a young person, they would refer to someone with two different sex hormones or two different sex organs as hermaphroditic. But like, and then I got older and I started to learn like, oh, it's actually more than just your physical body parts. There's a whole classification of hormones that kind of dictate your identity, like what your brain understands itself to be. There's a whole classification of hormones that actually tell your body what type of body you have. And so when we do like these really bad, like black and white fallacies, like, well, listen, if you were born with a penis, then you're just a man by default, and you have no other choice in life other than to identify as the body part hanging between your legs. I think that's a false equivalency, because there's so much that goes into forming a human identity other than the thing between your legs. There's all kinds of stuff happening chemically inside of your body that dictate who you think you are and how you feel like you need to express yourself. It's not a mental disorder. They removed it from the DSM for a reason. It's not a disorder. This is a chemical, physical, biological makeup that people have. So when people tell me, listen, I was born one way, but I identify in a different way because this is who I see myself as, I understand that as being a biological trait. This is not the emperor having different clothes. This is a person who has a biological makeup that is different than my own, that is causing them to have this identity marker.
Yeah. So what do you think, Mike? Any questions about our positions?
Yeah, I mean, those are great topics, and this thing spread out immediately into gender, and I kind of saw that coming, I guess. But what I wanted to focus in on for the purposes of a less than 2-hour conversation is pronouns. As far as somebody saying, "Well, hey, look,"
I want to let you talk, but I have a clarifying question, because you said it spread to gender, but you want to talk about pronouns. Our language, our pronouns are gendered. She, him, those are right. Gendered words. So you want to talk about a thing that is gendered, like other Romance languages. But then you said you didn't want to get into gender. So I'm confused. Can you clarify what you mean by I don't want to get into gender, I want to talk about pronouns?
Well, I'm happy to talk about gender, but the causation of gender and genetics and all of that, it's just simply what I wanted to focus on was I want to be called him or her or she or turtle or whatever.
Okay.
Talk about that.
I can't tell you how many people have walked around and told me I want to be called turtle. It happens every day to me, Justin. Does it happen to you? Like people are, when I hear, the reason I'm saying that, I'm of course being facetious. Just as a tip to you, Mike, it becomes very hard to take you serious when you throw that in here. When you throw that throwaway little clause into your sentence, all of a sudden you are showing your ass to people. All right. You are understanding. We are understanding now where you're coming from is you are being hyperbolic. You are using examples that don't exist in the real world in any statistically significant rate. And it doesn't sound like you are interested in a conversation. It sounds like you want to rant. And again, this is just a tip to you that when you do that, the serious people in the room are going to immediately start ignoring you. So why don't we take it from there? What's your problem with somebody saying, I am going to use a pronoun that somebody has requested that I use?
Okay, if I can back up a step. The reason why I brought up turtle was not be hyperbolic, which means to be inflammatory and create a fuss. That's not, it just came across my Instagram thing that the Mental Health Advisory Board in Oregon, there's a gal that's like, I'm she, her, turtle. Just saw it today. So,
okay, where did you read that from?
Statistically significant discussions sort of ignore what may be a frickin' joke. So can we get to the point here? And hyperbolic doesn't mean inflammatory. It means exaggerated, but go on.
Oh, okay. Well, this was factual and it was recent, and that's why I brought it up, and that's why I'm talking about this.
And it could be a joke.
Like,
have you met the person? Do you know why they did that?
Yeah. Well, it's a video clip, and you can go look her up, and I will send you the name.
You're not answering the question. Do you at least acknowledge it might be a joke? Like somebody might have done that humorously or to make some sort of point?
No, she was in a business meeting, and somebody taped it and then put it on YouTube.
Okay, so it's impossible for somebody to be joking about that or be making some other point. Or, like I said, maybe there's somebody there that wants to be called Turtle and are trying to make some sort of effort to drive that point home in a humorous way. I don't know what other way to express it, but if they legitimately think they're a turtle, right, then I think we are into a different discussion, because as Justin so wisely pointed out, the discussion about that is the same as saying, I want to be called a vagina haver when I don't have a vagina, right? That's possibly problematic. But that's not the conversation we're having. We're having a conversation about, I want to be called her or him or they or whatever, which is a different conversation. All right. So why don't we start over and you explain to me why honoring somebody's request to use their preferred pronoun is a bad thing, which is, I assume, your position.
Thank you. That's actually what I wanted to talk about. The point of a lot of atheists is, as long as there's no harm, then, that's your, I don't want to get another topic with you, but that's, hey, that's okay then for a lot of atheists. And for Christians, they're like, well, I have a book and it has some rules in it, and I would really like to not break those rules because I want to honor my God. And that's the basic. There's many other differences. Okay. So here we go.
But just to clarify, breaking those rules would be your harm, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we are operating under the same rules. It's just we disagree on what constitutes harm.
Yeah, can you find me the part of the Bible where it says that using someone's preferred pronouns is breaking a rule?
Yeah, I can by category, which is you're not supposed to lie. That's the top 10.
It's not a lie.
Amendments, you've heard of it.
Okay, and yes, I'm with you on Justin. We are now to the point where I said you were going to make a definitional argument, and you are saying that a pronoun means genetic sex, biological sex. That is not what the most of the world is now using that term to mean. Do you at least acknowledge that there is a difference opinion about what the pronoun points to? Gender versus biological sex?
Yes, I would agree that in the last 5 years, it's changed as far as NIH, WHO, all these organizations purposely came in and made gender-friendly things because they were concerned as far as people being suicidal, et cetera. And they changed the language, changed the meaning. That still doesn't change it. Gender and sex, no matter what they say, are related. I'm looking for data. You said there was piles of it.
So here's the question. You just said gender and sex are related. Do you mean they are identical? Or do you mean that your sex can influence your gender? Because I will agree with the latter.
Your sex does. Yes, your sex influences the gender and it predicts the gender.
Yes, but not to 100% accuracy, correct?
They're not.
Do you agree that that sex does not 100% predict your gender?
Sometimes these sexual chromosomes, just like other chromosomes, aren't expressed properly, and then we kind of.
That's not my what I'm getting at. Normal case, within one standard deviation. Let's say that my biological gender, all of the biology points to, I am a male. Right, that's my biology. Does that mean in the vast majority, if not 100% of the cases, let's say 100% of the cases, that my gender is male? Or are there cases where my biology says male, but my gender is female?
Well, I think gender is a made-up construct in the last 50 years.
You are dancing around the frickin' question and point for the last 20 minutes. Yeah. You thinking that gender is made-up construct is fine, but I I'll just point to all the research that's been done, and I'll pass it off to Justin because I'm just going to blow my lid if we keep doing this dance.
Yeah, so I already know the argument that you're trying to get to, so maybe I'll just cut it off at the pass. You using someone's preferred pronouns is not asking to lie. No one's asking you to lie. A lie is when you say something that you know is untruthful in an effort to deceive somebody. No one's asking you to lie about your opinion on somebody's pronouns. They're just asking you to address them using the pronouns that is affiliated with their identity marker. That is what they have socially constructed for their own identity. Just like if a cousin of mine changed their name and they wanted me to call them by their new name, I'm not lying by using their new name. I know they were born with a name and now they have a different name. I'm not lying when I use the new name. So like, it's not a great argument because you're not actually lying when you're just granting somebody that this is the identity marker that they want to be seen as socially.
And I agree with you. I think where Mike's coming from is he is equating him with the phrase penis haver.
Right.
And so if I'm calling you him, I am lying because you don't have a penis if you're female. And that's the lie in Mike's head, because he cannot separate gender from biology, even though when you go crack biology books, all the experts who have studied this say that they are not related and have not related. And there's examples throughout history of whole societies where it is more accepted that there is gender differences amongst people that all have the same, let's say, chromosomes. I'm reminded of a meme I saw today where somebody was making a similar argument to Mike, to Dr. Jay McCrate. He's at University of Washington. He's studied human genomics. And the guy said, you're just wrong. Gender and biological sex are the same thing. And his reply was, he said, you need to follow the science. And the doctor said, I did. I literally have a PhD in human genomics. You have Dunning-Kruger. And that was like, okay, that needs to be a t-shirt. I have a PhD, you have Dunning-Kruger. So Mike, you're coming in here telling us that you personally don't agree with the scientific consensus that biological sex is different than gender. Why should we listen to you when you say that, when the majority of experts who study this for decades disagree with you?
Now we're back to the Emperor's New Clothes. I disagree with it.
So conspiracy theory.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not a conspiracy theory. It's everybody needs to go with this. It's nonsense.
So you don't agree with the medical community?
That's a conspiracy theory. What you're describing is a conspiracy theory. You are saying that the evidence that they say is there is not in fact there. And so everybody just needs to go along with this, and they're making shit up. You are now in conspiracy theory land, and I hope you recognize this. These sorts of things, just like the opening statement, the whole vaccine, anti-vax stuff, at its core is a conspiracy theory, because for your truth that you perceive to be true, everybody else has to be either the most incompetent people and fooled, or in on it. They have to be going along with it. They have to just say, oh, yeah, I'll make up some data that supports this. So I don't know about you, Justin. I don't have time for conspiracy theories.
Yeah, I if I'm going to trust somebody's information on gender identity and sex, I'm going to trust an actual medical expert. And this is not a new thing. So, for example, I've got an article pulled up from 2007 talking about gender identity. And I'll just read you a quick snippet from it. It says, gender identity of a person is the final result of genetic, hormonal, and morphologic sex over a long period. Sex determination, and specifically male sex determination, has been correlated to the presence of the Y chromosome, which in turn has been a karyotype signal of testes. However, research has provided data to convince this theory is only part of the truth. In addition to the Y chromosome, a multitude of other genes influence sex determination and are able to cause male to female sex reversal and vice versa. It is of great interest that these genes are located in more than one autosomal chromosomes or even in the X chromosome. It has become obvious that sex determination according to the genetic sex is a complicated matter that not only requires the presence of Y chromosome. This fact triggered extensive research, so on and so forth. So just having a Y chromosome doesn't determine your sex. Like, there are lots of factors that play into your sex, your gender, your identity. It's not just the guy's got testes and he's a guy. It's more complicated than that. And so I agree with the scientific literature. If you disagree with the scientific literature, your disagreement's not with us. Your disagreement is with science. And I don't think you're qualified to disagree with the science unless you've got a PhD in biology.
We'll give you the last word,
I
Mike.
appreciate that. And genes are very complex, and there's other genes that affect the X and Ys besides just the actual X and Y. That is true.
Okay. Well, listen, Mike, it was good to hear from you. We're going to move on to our next caller, but thanks for calling in.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Boy,
all right.
I get so frustrated with callers who dance around it. Like, he did not want for the longest time to say, I just don't accept that genetic biological sex is different than gender. And I told him right at the beginning, you're going to this definitional argument and it's going to be a loser. But he just walked down that road. And, Mike, if you're still listening, there's people that have recently gone to Antarctica, flat earthers who have gone to Antarctica and seen a 24-hour sun, and they still believe that the earth is flat because, as you said, everybody just has to go along with it or they'll lose their funding and they won't get the contracts, despite the mountains of evidence that everybody that is an expert in navigation and GPS and weather and astronomy, all of those people are all in agreement about the shape of the earth. So you're in poor company. You may not like it. You may be uncomfortable calling somebody you perceive as being obviously male her or she. You may be uncomfortable doing the opposite, vice versa, right? That doesn't make it untrue. It doesn't make it lying. It doesn't make it a Emperor's New Clothes style of just sort of going along with it. It's just you getting used to new information. That's what you're feeling in your brain. How do I reconcile my firm belief that it's a man's man and a woman is a woman with it's a spectrum, it's complicated. Why don't we all just try to figure this out and listen to what the experts say and get used to that feeling, embrace that feeling and do the analysis first. Don't let your feeling tell you what the answer is and then come on a call like this and embarrass yourself by just saying, I don't agree with every expert in the world, right? Or the vast majority, I should say. So sorry for getting a little nuts on that one, Justin, but it just drives me nuts.
No, I get it. And listen, it's okay to disagree on certain things, but at some point you have to have a little bit of humility and think, well, maybe all these people with PhDs in biology, maybe they know something I don't.
Yeah.
It's as easy as that.
Yeah. And if the response, to play devil's advocate, if the response to that is, well, science has been wrong before. Yes, science has been wrong before. Look at cold fusion. They're a huge article. And what did we do? What fixed the problem? More science. People said, that looks weird. Let me try to reproduce those results. What did they do? More experience. And they're like, I can't reproduce these guys' results. Turns out it's a fraud. Andrew Wakefield, getting back to the cold open of vaccines. There's a study. Vaccines are related to autism. That sounds interesting. Let's do more science. It was so wrong. They investigated it, found out it was fraudulent, and he was disbarred. I'm a lawyer. It's disbarred. You lose your license, I guess, your accreditation. So yeah, more science will keep being done. And if there's a change, there'll be a change. But so far, this has been going on more than 5 years, Mike. I know that's what the story you get from your preacher or your Fox News host or whatever. But this has been going on for decades. I have a dear friend who is a child psychiatrist. She's a teaching professor. She does research on the side effects of medication that are used for kids. There's all sorts of stuff she does. She has read the literature. She does clinic work. She has inpatient kids who stay in the University of Maryland Medical Center in a 24 secure location because of the problems they get into, because of all sorts of things, including gender confusion and gender issues with their parents who think like you and don't understand their kids. And she's done the research. It's very real. There's still a lot to be done. Gender fluidity is kind of weird. How does that work? We're not as clear on that as the fact that we know that there are some people who honestly feel like and present as female when their biological sex points to male. And if those experts are willing to say that, it should be good enough to us until more science is done to contradict it. And one last point, when science usually does correct, it's not like, oh my God, the age of the earth isn't 4 point whatever, it's actually 5,000 years. It's usually like 4.3 billion. Well, now we think it's 4.25 billion, right? So even if there's some adjustment here, the amount of research that's been done here is not going to be overturned. So no, Mike, it's not a conspiracy. People are not just going along with it to get money or funding or whatever you're talking about. It's just you being uncomfortable with new information.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Well, we've got Ransom waiting to get in from Wyoming, but before we pull in Ransom, let me do a couple of announcements. Last week, for those who weren't at the beginning of the show, we did our first 24-hour live stream and fundraiser. And we want to thank everybody, viewers, donors, volunteers, everybody in the ACA community. Thanks for helping the fundraiser to be a huge success. Your donations were incredibly generous. We raised over $10,000, and we're incredibly proud of everyone that supported the fundraiser. But if you weren't able to be there for the campaign, you can still donate. You can go to tiny.cc/amplifyaca. It's tiny.cc/amplifyaca, or at the website at atheists-community.org. So again, guys, thank you so much for contributing and helping to the cause of the ACA. We're excited to continue and to expand all of the great work that the ACA is doing. Another way to support is by sending super chats. If we get 10 super chats for $10 or more, we will have our backup host, Jimmy Jr. will draw a suggestion, any suggestion of your choice. So it could be anything you want to. It could be Jesus with space lasers riding dinosaurs with a sword in his mouth, whatever it is. Jimmy Jr.'s got your back.
Sounds crazy. Where did you get that strange idea?
And also the ACA wants you to know what's going on in our community. And for that information, head to the atheists-community.org, where you can learn more about the organization itself, its policies, and how you can get involved. And if you like what we do, please consider supporting us on Patreon. Giving to our Patreon ensures our ability to continue to produce the content that you love. So visit tiny.cc/Patreon AXP. It's tiny.cc/Patreon AXP. And we want to send a big thank you to the crew who puts on the show every single week. The video operators, the audio operators, the note takers, the call screeners, the chat moderators. None of this would be possible without this fine crew.
Awesome. Wait a second. I don't see any cats or dogs. I was told there would be cats or dogs, so I'm disappointed. Yay, crew. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for supporting the show, and there's a lot of volunteers that go into making the ACA a possibility. So big thank you for everyone who donates their time when they could be doing other things. And I was thinking about something this week, Graham, which is, believe it or not, God was the first furry to exist.
Really?
So this is a crazy thought. I know, like, the right wing is going crazy on the furry thing, but God was actually a furry to begin with. Adam was born with all the anatomy you would expect him to have. God never changed Adam's anatomy. And remember, he created the animals first and wanted Adam to find a mate of the animals.
Right, that's a good point.
It wasn't until he couldn't find a mate with the animals that he said, fine, I guess I'll make woman.
Right.
So Not only does the Bible God think women is an afterthought, but he was a furry to begin with.
So he created his Sims as a furry and said, hey, I want you to get it on with another animal, and sat back and waited. And apparently didn't know that was going to happen, that he wouldn't find a mate. Otherwise, he would have skipped to just making the right one. So that's questions. And then when he couldn't get off watching the hot Adam on animal action, then he made a woman so he could watch that.
That's exactly what happened. God is always watching. Never forget.
He is. You mentioned super chats. We do have a bunch.
Yes.
I don't know if
Let's
you want to
get through them.
Okay. All right.
Absolutely.
They're down at the bottom of our document that we're looking, and they're really well laid out. So
let's grab let's grab the first one. We've got one here from Jay Cal, my good friend. Thank you for the $2 super chat. Jay Cal says, big W to the ACA, Justin the Great. Well, I don't know if I am that great, but Jay Cal, your support for my work is always great. You're here at the XP shows and my live streams. We are so glad that you're part of the community. And Tallybeck, good to see you, friend. Thank you for the $19.99. Very generous.
Wow.
Tallybeck says, happy Sunday, guys.
Yes.
And Graham, you want to read Miranda?
Hey, Miranda Rensberger for $10. Don't worry, Justin. You did better on my name than a lot of people who know me in person. Thank you, Miranda, as always. She is a longtime supporter. That's a $10 super chat. I don't know if Jimmy needs to draw a picture of Miranda being dissatisfied with her name pronunciation or not.
There's going to be a picture of me getting knifed.
It is the Ides of March, so beware.
Dr. Joe, good to see you, friend. Thank you for the 49 super chat. Says it was really petty when God said bet to Satan to destroy Job for funsies and destroy Job. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, I guess we should clarify for our question of the week, the ones that will be read on air and voted on and determined by Johnny P. Angel are the answers you give in the comments to this video. We're trying to get comments into the videos, of course. That's where we can see them all. Everybody else can see them and vote on them. And of course, it helps drive the algorithm, which gets us more traffic, which helps us be seen by more people and spread the message. So please do leave your answer to the question of the week, which is, it was really petty when God did blank, in the comments below.
Absolutely. And a good friend of the channel as well, Texas Panhandler. Welcome in. Texas Panhandler says it was petty when God wrestled with Moses until his kid was circumcised and the blood smeared on Moses. Weird stuff. Yeah, Exodus chapter 4. Yeah, that's crazy.
Oh my God. I just for our listeners, okay, I'm sitting here making faces like WTF, and Justin's like, oh, that's Exodus 4. And this translation is this and that translation. The Justin is the bomb when it comes to knowing this stuff. It's amazing.
That's one of my favorite stories.
I have memories of hearing it at some point, but I'm not sure I want to know. So,
yeah, it's a wild one. Well, I'm sure we'll get to it eventually. Graham, can you read a couple super chats here? I'm going to see who else is on the list.
Sure, absolutely. Laren Misha Sadai, $5. Thank you. The grammatically correct pronoun is the one they want you to use. You don't get to decide which that is. I agree. Again, definitional grammatically correct goes to like, hey, I get to decide what pronoun means, not the people using the language at large. And that was definitely Mike's position. So thank you very much for that donation. Dr. Joanne Ketch for $4.99. We use pronouns to save lives, support mental health, reduce substance misuse, reduce unsheltered persons, I assume, and prevent self-unalivement. Yes, those are all very good reasons. I would posit that even if those things didn't exist, it would still be the polite thing to do.
Yeah, and I actually know Dr. Joe personally. She's a real PhD, not one of these.
So Dr. Ketch is quite a catch.
Yeah, she really is.
Right, okay.
And she's a therapist, and she works with a lot of people in the deconstruction community. And so we really treasure her expertise in this area. She's helped me out a lot with some of this. The topic we were just talking about, Dr. Joe, was very helpful.
Oh, great. Oh, well, I apologize.
W for professionals.
retroactively, I apologize. I'm sure you've grown up with the she's quite a catch joke your whole life. Like, I'm Graham, so Graham Cracker and Grambo and kilogram and decagram and all of that stuff. So I apologize. It was irresistible.
Isaiah.
There you go.
Oh, Isaiah got a $10 super chat. I don't know if he has a drawing suggestion, but he says very few chances in life to make someone happy with no effort on your part. Using preferred pronouns is one of them. Why not call someone what they identify with? It's a free win-win, best deal ever. And I agree. Like, you're not harming anybody by using the identification that they want to be identified as.
Yeah, I think. Again, to play devil's advocate, Mike's position is gender and biology are the same, my biological sex, right? So by saying, if I called you her because you desired to be called her, Justin, I would be playing into a delusion because I am lying to you, and that is sinful. So there's all sorts of stuff wrapped up in this one premise. The core premise is I get to decide what gender means, what pronouns point to, that they point to a biological thing rather than to a identity thing. And that is very hard for people to get used to. I was born in 1970. All right. I grew up when, like, you went to McDonald's and there were ashtrays everywhere. And, the movie 9 to 5 was kind of a documentary where the bosses were smacking secretaries on the butt all the time and you couldn't do anything about it. And the Civil Rights Act was a very new thing, right? I get it. I have had those uncomfortable things. I remember distinctly the first person I met who was a friend of mine who came out as trans and me going, like, what is this, right? And I get those feelings of like, that's not how the world works. But the way to react to that is not to go, therefore I reject it. It's to say, well, wow, I'm being presented with new evidence. Should I do some analysis? Okay, let me go do some reading. Wow, a lot of people have been talking about this before I even experienced it. Maybe I should read. Oh, look, there's a person who's got a PhD in it. What do they say? And over time, you learn that, oh my gosh, this is real. And these people have been suffering for a long time. Wow, I never knew. Okay, I am going to go ahead and change my mind, or change my presumptions, I should say. I never really was against anything. It was just like mind-blowing. Okay, wow, now I know more. That's the way I propose you should react to new information. Sometimes somebody will come to you and say the earth is flat. You go, wow, that's new information. You do some reading and you're like, nope, that's bullshit. Yeah. That's the proper way, not just saying, no, I don't like it, therefore conspiracy.
Well, let's grab one more super chat. Can you read Miranda's super chat? And I'm going to get the next guest pulled in. I'm going to get Ransom, and then after we get done with Ransom, we'll pull the next one in. I think Joshua wants to come in from Arizona.
Okay, sounds good. Miranda Rensberger, member for a year, another $20. So thank you, Miranda. Always very generous. For those asking how trans issues relate to atheism, apparently I'm guessing that's going on in chat. It always does. It's because mostly religious people pushing anti-trans positions. When people use religion to promote bigotry, atheists have an obligation to speak against that. Yeah, I think atheism itself is not a position or a way of thinking. It is a response to a single question. Do you believe in God? There is the Venn diagram of people who are atheists and who are secular humanists, if you would describe it that way. That's a very close and overlapping circle. So if you find yourself being an atheist for the right reasons, and I would propose that is, I reject your proposition because you had not provided me with sufficient evidence to convince me of the truth of your proposition. If that's the reason you are an atheist, as I said in my opening, if you reject the idea that cod liver oil, which RFK Jr. suggests you use to treat your kids' measles, if you reject that, just like every medical association does, because cod liver oil was a folk remedy back in the 1700s that has been proven to be utterly ineffective at treating measles. If you reject that, you should also reject people who say, oh, gender and sex are the same thing, because they are just as against the science as everything else that I've mentioned. So thank you, Miranda. We did, while you were talking, we had a few more come in. We can probably save those for later. So I know it's been a while since we had a call.
We'll grab them between guests. We should have Ransom from Wyoming with us as the simulation hypothesis, and then found discrepancies in research after Truth Wanted. So I'm assuming you were watching a Truth Wanted episode recently. So Ransom, what's on your mind?
What up, host? I forgot about me. What up, homies? Well, what I had to talk about was I was talking about the simulation hypothesis with Truth Wanted. The dude with the gray beard, I don't remember his name, but they insisted that I look into Stephanie Hofstadter. I think that's her name. I might be wrong, but she said that the simulation hypothesis isn't congruent to the double slit experiment. And just a short idea for what the simulation hypothesis is
we live in we're in the matrix. I mean, just let's cut to the point, because I'm not sure where we're going with this, and I think we've talked before. We're in the matrix. We live in a simulation. So it was basically hard solipsism. We cannot tell that we live in a simulation.
Right. So I want to ask you a question real quick. Ransom, do you mind? Do you think that there's a God responsible for the simulation?
No, I think it's a bunch of idiots with better computers than we have.
Oh, well,
nice talking to you, I guess. I'm not sure what this has to do with the topic of our show. Why are you calling the Atheist Experience with this proposition? I'm curious.
Because I don't think atheism or theism is completely correct. Because
it's a binary.
Based on what?
Well, hold on. Just for our audience, atheism is not correct or incorrect. Atheism is a response to a question. Am I convinced there is a God? I am not yet convinced. That's atheism. I'm not sure how it can be correct. It is my take, my response to a question. So now the theist side is saying, I am convinced that there is a God. In fact, they often will go further and assert, not only am I convinced there is a God, there is a God, and you should act accordingly. Now, all of a sudden, they have a burden of proof to do something. And I would agree with you. I don't think that they're correct in that position, because they have not met that burden of proof. So I just wanted to clarify that for our audience. It's kind of a binary. If what you mean is, I don't think that there is or is not a God, that's a true binary. If you think that you are or are not convinced, that is also a binary, but it's not a correct position. You can't say it's correct or incorrect. So maybe you want to rephrase?
I don't think atheists are correct in saying that this universe is all that there is. And
that's not what atheism says. That's not what atheism says. Hold on.
Naturalism.
I need you to recognize something, Ransom. Do you agree that that is not what atheism says? Atheism does not say this universe is all that exists. That has nothing, quite frankly, has nothing to do with atheism.
Atheism is disbelief in a God.
Atheism is not being convinced that there is a God. Okay, if I am not convinced there is a God, does it mean that this universe is all that exists?
No, you could also have a multiverse. You could also have a
okay. So let's try again. A simple yes or no is fine. Simple yes or no is fine. You agree. So now let's try again. Why are you calling the Atheist Experience? A bunch of people who are not convinced that God exists, but now you recognize that has no bearing on whether or not we think there might be more than the presentation of the universe that we currently experience. Why are you calling us with this?
Well, that's based on language. Like, our language isn't superior enough to say in one word something beyond this universe, something that controls this universe.
Ransom, I don't want to waste a bunch of time on this topic because I don't know if this is actually relevant to what the show is about. And our claim is not that we know like what is in our universe. Our claim is that we just lack a belief in a creator God figure or multiple gods or however you want to define God. But whether or not there are alternate universes or this universe is infinite, we don't know. We're not making claims about that. In fact, we're not even making claims about whether or not God doesn't exist. We're just saying we don't believe that a God exists. That is our current state of belief. Now, if you believe that a God exists, we'd love to hear the argument for why that God exists or multiple gods, because that's kind of what the show is about. So do you have an argument for God? And if the answer is no, we got to move on to the next caller.
Well, I believe that there is a conscious observer that is necessary for the universe.
There we go.
And
because of the double slit experiment.
Yes.
That's not how the double slit experiment works.
That's not how it works. I know where you're going. First of all, there needs to be as somebody in order for the universe to exist. Sort of also smells of presuppositionalism as well. So I don't think we want to go into the double slit experiment, how it doesn't work the way that you suggest it works. It's not literally observation as seeing something, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I don't know, Justin. I don't think our audience is very interested in hearing this. How about you?
No, they're not.
I would recommend sticking with Truth Wanted. The scope of their show is what you're talking about. We are specifically interested in, unlike the last caller as well, Mike, who wanted to talk about genders, but because of his God beliefs, we are interested in people who have a belief in a God or don't have a belief in a God and want to sort of break that down and analyze what they believe and why. And while I find it fascinating that you think we live in the Matrix, I'm not that interested in it because there's not a bunch of people running around saying we live in the Matrix, therefore we need to deport a bunch of people and not let people have marriages and not let these people get abortions. That's not happening. So I find it very boring.
Right. And I would just add with the double slit experiment, it's not the conscious observing that causes the collapse of the waveform. It's the act of measuring and interacting with it. That's what causes the collapse. It's not just because some conscious entity observed it. That's not how that works.
Yeah.
But listen, Ransom, it was good to talk to you. We got to move on to our next caller, but thanks for calling in.
Thank you.
All right. We're going to get Joshua next. Let me grab a couple super chats. Bagel Bites with a $6.99 super chat, welcome from the Great White North, says, would have been nice if some a-hole didn't stand on a corner spewing nonsense and effing up 2,000 years of history.
Yeah.
Can you draw that one, Jimmy?
I don't know. Canadian $6.99. Is that $10? I don't know. The Jimmy's expensive.
No, it goes the other way.
Jimmy is pricey. I know, right? It reminds me of The Life of Brian. You know, if you haven't seen it, go see the movie like Monty Python, The Life of Brian, where Brian, a analog for Jesus, the guy who was born in the manger next to Jesus, but has a very different life. He ends up sitting on the corner because he's being chased and he wants to blend in with all the other preachers and soothsayers and starts saying things like, just, you know, treat other people the way that you want to be treated. And people stop and listen. They're like, oh my God, we got to follow this guy. That's kind of what happened, I think. That feels true to me.
Right. And Texas Panhandler again with the super chat. Thank you so much for the $9.99 super chat. It says Mike also won't use people's nicknames because it's a lie. That's such a good point. How many times have you used a nickname for somebody? You got to go do your penance now.
I think all of these examples are great. I am going to defend Mike's position once again and say I don't think that's the same as what he's saying. I do think that he means his core argument is me calling you Justy, right, as a nickname is not the same as me saying, hi, vagina haver. or
Right.
whatever your eye colors isn't haver. I think that's his core argument. I want to give him slightly more credit, as he's wrong at a different point in the logical process. He's not, I don't think that Mike would object to using nicknames, but he doesn't put them in the same category. He doesn't think that it's a lie. But I do agree that these examples are perfect because it is an example of what we're talking about. Be polite. Well, your name's not Justin. I'm not gonna call you Justy just because you like it, right?
Right.
So sorry,
Right.
Justy, go ahead.
And Nero with a $10 super chat and a drawing request.
Uh-oh.
Nero says, "Can we get a drawing of Jesus with a they them name tag? Also, the I am
Jimmy
turtle
just signaled he's already on it.
The I am turtle is just otherkin or Therian slander.
Yeah.
Good people who don't tend to actually think they're animals in any physical sense."
There you go.
Yeah, I agree with that. And also, last one, J Cow with a $2 super chat. Thank you so much. Says, "Praise Doug. Hail Doug, the rock of salvation." He's watching over us right now with his consort Sharon Stone.
Oh my goodness. I'm not in on this fanfic.
You might not know about Doug and Sharon yet. Don't worry.
Yeah, okay. All right. I'll
We'll fill
find
you
out.
in. All right, we're going to get Josh in here from Arizona. Josh wants to discuss faith and belief in general. Josh, can you expand on that?
Hello. Yeah, well, the idea, the way I look at belief is more of like a trust. I look at it like a simple trust. Like if I trust something or someone, I'm typically going to believe it until
Do you believe a
is
person
to
or do you
give me
believe a
reason.
thing that a proposition though? By that, I mean,
Either or.
you can believe a thing a person says, but you can also believe there is no car coming down the street, so it is safe to cross. So in that sense, you are trusting your senses, but belief is accepting that a proposition is true. Would you agree with that as a definition? You have become convinced that this proposition, whatever it is true.
Like for example, going to school, I would trust science a lot. I had a lot of belief in science, even though I wasn't really that much of a believer in God, but I was naturally to trust people who were in authority of me, who have education, who are teaching something. And I think that, like, for
Do you
instance,
think
I know
that's
this is a big
science?
topic, but like globe Earth, for instance, you got flat Earth, globe Earth, and there's a lot of science, and it's above my head. But
here's a secret. I want you to continue. It's not above your head, but go ahead.
I've tried. I've listened. I've listened to lots of debates on it. It's very complicated. There's a lot of mathematics. There's a lot going on there. But okay, so one time I just want to make a critique.
Sure.
Real quick, because I understand you guys think the Bible is just, man wrote it, man. There's no inspired God behind it. But for Christians, for believers, we actually take this Bible very serious.
We
and
know
when
that.
you guys,
We agree that. Do you know who Justin is?
Yeah,
Do you know Justin's background? Did we lose Josh?
I've heard him. Yes, I know he's
Okay.
Yeah. I know he's.
Justin went to seminary and studied this. I don't want to speak for you, Justin, but you're talking to somebody who truly believed this to the level that he was dedicating his life to it and invested his education and has gone and can recite pretty much most of the Bible from memory as far as my experience goes. So he knows this inside and out. So let's start from that premise. You're talking to somebody who went through that. What do you have to say to Justin about that? That now that he has found that there is not enough evidence to support the supernatural claims that are in the Bible?
Well, I mean, for one, I don't know Justin. I know you somewhat cross-examine. I've listened to you longer. So I can't really make too much of a comment on that. But I'm just saying, in terms of like beliefs, right? Like the same way you guys kind of bash the Bible is the same way people bash transgender ideology. And I don't think that's good either way.
Does Justin do? Yeah, go ahead, Justin. I don't bash the Bible. Do you?
I mean, I bash the Bible, but I don't know if that matters. People bash all kinds of holy books. I think the question is whether or not it's true, right? Like it doesn't matter. Like if I say something bad about the Quran, like the fact that I said something bad about the Quran, for most people is irrelevant. They want to know, is the thing leaving my mouth true or not? So like when I talk about the various religions, the question that I'm trying to get at when I'm having a discussion is, well, who's actually right? If this book is from God, can you provide me the evidence that would lead me to conclude that it is from God? Because I can go into the Bible and I can find dozens of contradictions, even contradictions between Jesus and Paul. I could find historical errors. There's dozens and dozens of failed prophecies. Even Jesus' own predictions don't come true. So if there's evidence that would point to this thing being true, I'd love to actually see it, because the evidence I've been able to find points me in the other direction.
The idea because something is true justifies bashing is not valid. So people,
I'm confused. Explain that. I'm explain that. So if it is true that the Bible, let's take the mildest of bashings. If it is true that the Bible depicts a story of Jesus cursing a fig tree because he didn't like that it doesn't grow figs when he wants them, isn't it fair and accurate to A, say that that's what the Bible says, and B, say that seems ridiculous? That's the mildest of bashing. Isn't that, is that what you're talking about? Like just saying what the Bible actually says and then saying that seems ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. Yeah, that, like I'm saying, with the transgender ideology, that's like saying that's ridiculous. But these are people's beliefs.
So
I don't understand. If somebody comes to me and says I shouldn't vaccinate my kid, that's their belief. I'm not going to agree with them, and I'm going to say you're wrong. And if you go around telling other people this, I'm going to tell them that you are lying about the effectiveness of vaccines. Just because it's their belief doesn't mean that I have to respect it. I respect them as a human being, but I don't have to give any respect to their beliefs. Don't you agree with that?
No, I agree. You don't have to respect the belief per se, but you have to respect the person.
Right.
Well,
okay.
We're not bashing the person, but let me ask you a question. The Quran allows you to marry and divorce prepubescent girls. Is that a ridiculous belief?
It depends on if you're talking to the person. The person has that belief, right?
Joshua, we're not talking about the person. We're talking about what the text says. So
take a breath, Joshua. You just said it depends as to whether or not it's morally good thing for grown men to marry and divorce prepubescent girls. So take a breath. Think. We're not trying to set a trap here. Take a breath. Talk to Justin about this.
Right. So, Joshua, I want to make sure you're understanding what I'm saying properly. So just take a deep breath. Like, I'm not here to attack you. So if you don't know, I'll tell you, the Quran allows for marriage and divorce of prepubescent girls. The Prophet himself was married to a 6-year-old, consummated at age 9. And in multiple countries right now that is in that theocracy, they allow you to marry girls as low as age 9. So I'm asking you, would I be justified in criticizing that belief?
In criticizing the belief, sure.
Okay, so I'm treating the nonsense in your holy book the same way I'm treating the nonsense in their holy book, and you just don't like it because it makes you uncomfortable. But the fact that it makes you uncomfortable doesn't take away the rationale behind whether or not people can look at a holy book and say, that sounds silly to me. So if you have an argument for God or for the Bible, I'd love to engage in that argument. But if you just came to complain that like we're stepping on your comfortability, then I don't really care for that. And we can move on to the next caller. So did you want to talk about the topic or did you want to complain?
No, it's okay. Basically, the idea is that I think faith is just trust. And I typically usually trust experts, not just anyone.
So you're looking at one.
When it comes to like,
so here's a question. You said that you listened to debates and did research on flat Earth, and it was over your head, and you didn't know what to believe, right?
No, I did not say that.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I believed that the globe Earth because, I believe globe Earth because I was taught that. Yeah.
You believe it. Why? Because you were taught it. Is that what you're saying? Because a person in authority told you that thing?
Yes, pretty much.
Is that a good reason to believe something?
NASA. I typically think yes, because they're the experts. And I think that's how we function in society. Yeah.
Okay. The follow-up question is, I tend to agree with you, but I think that belief is a little more subtle. So belief can be granted based on varying thresholds of evidence. If you come to me and say, I had a tuna fish sandwich for lunch, I might believe you, right? Like people, I know what a tuna is. I know people make sandwiches out of it. I know that they eat them for lunch. There's not really, I can't see a reason you would lie. So I might believe you. If you then said, I ate that tuna fish sandwich while I was on a flying saucer, now all of a sudden I might not believe you. Maybe I believe you ate the sandwich, but the flying saucer all of a sudden makes the threshold a little different. So I tend to agree with you. If you're in school and you're hearing from a teacher that, hey, this is this and that is that, and you believe and there's not much at stake, then maybe that's a good or a low enough threshold that you can believe. But when you start moving to more important questions, right? Like, does anything happen to us after we die? Should a grown man marry and have sex with a 9-year-old girl? Was it ever morally justified to own slaves? Those questions seem to be bigger and demand more skepticism, a higher amount of evidence before you accept them. Would you agree with that?
I know that's the claim. I'm not sure. I think once you have a level of trust with authority, with anyone, you typically don't need much evidence.
Okay, so you get trust from somebody who comes along and says, hey, I'm your friend, and you get to know them over a period of time. Maybe you do some business dealings with them, and they return lost money that they found of yours and all that stuff. They build up trust, and then they say, hey, I got this new investment. If you just give me $1 million, I'm going to double that in a year. Would you trust them?
I could easily fall prey to them. Yeah, if they're my friend and I trust them, sure.
Okay, so I think I applaud you. You are the caller of the day so far. No. I am saying you are the caller of the day for the honesty in that answer, because I think that is what we're talking about. That as the claim increases, the outrageousness of the claim, the extraordinary aspects of the claim go up, your demand for evidence needs to go up. Otherwise, you fall victim to confidence tricksters, which is exactly, they're named that, con men, confidence scams, because of the phenomenon you're talking about right now. I gain your confidence, i.e. trust, and then I take advantage of that trust to extract value from you.
Yeah, because that's what trust is. Trust is you don't need much evidence once you have trust.
I disagree. I disagree. I trust my wife and my son with a whole bunch. But if they came to me and said, I just saw a dinosaur in our backyard, I am not going to believe them.
You might trust that they're being genuine.
That's not what I said. I may believe that they believe that there's a dinosaur, but I am not going to believe that there is, in fact, a dinosaur in the backyard, and neither should you, and you know you wouldn't. You know that this concept of trust being a binary thing is a false construction. You trust people up to a certain amount, and that amount is determined by how well you know them, what is at stake, and what is the claim being made.
I understand.
It's nothing for me to believe that you ate a tuna fish sandwich. It's everything for me to believe that I need to give money to your church so I can go to an afterlife.
I've had a brother that had schizophrenia.
That's not
and
the
I told him
point.
that I believe.
Listen, Josh, not the point. Not the point, right? It has nothing to do with this.
Well,
the point is, the bigger the claim, the more evidence you should require.
Right.
I hope that is what you take away from this, because you are admitting that you are vulnerable to con men, to politicians telling you don't need to vaccinate your kids so they can make money off of their supplements, all sorts of stuff that you'll be vulnerable to should you not demand evidence. I'm sorry, Justin, go ahead.
Well, I think it's kind of a silly thing, because like just willing to trust somebody doesn't mean you should trust everything that they tell you. And so we have the same problem like with Christians with the Bible. Like they read something and they like it, and then they accept it, and then they have this position that everything in the Bible should be trusted and shouldn't be questioned. But like if you just read the book, it's a very questionable book. Like even Jesus himself doesn't know how to read the Old Testament properly. He quotes it out of context, makes predictions for the future that don't come true. In Matthew 16:27 and 28, he says his second coming is going to happen before all the people standing there listening to him pass away. And it just simply didn't happen. He repeats the claim in Matthew chapter 24, and he repeats it again in Matthew 10:23. So like if I'm just looking at the book and saying, hey, like are all of these claims true in the book? Should I trust the book? The answer is clearly no. It's making all kinds of claims that are not true. It says that the Exodus happened in the middle of the 1400s when Ramses was the pharaoh. Ramses wasn't the pharaoh until the middle of the 1200s. So the Bible doesn't even get chronology right.
That's a great point. What are your thoughts on that, Josh?
Well, I mean, but then, well, I would say there's lots of people saying the opposite.
Okay, let's just assume you're right. I disagree with that. I disagree with that entirely. I think most scholars will agree with everything that Justin said, especially the Christian scholars. But let's just assume you're right. What do you do? What do you do if half of the scholars say Ramses was only pharaoh in the 1200s and the other half say Ramses are in the 1400s? What do you do? What's your answer if somebody says, do you believe that Ramses was a pharaoh during the Exodus? What's your answer?
I don't know. I haven't looked into that.
Perfect. No, that's the answer. I don't know.
A lot of
that's the answer.
I accepted a lot of Christianity before I read it. That's typically the case of trust. Now, going back to what you said, cross-examiner, I want to make a comment.
But
this idea
I just want to point out
that your wife
the point we're trying to make is you shouldn't just blindly trust things. You should examine everything. And just because someone tells you something, you shouldn't trust it, even if you think they're a trustworthy source. Because at the end of the day, you don't know if what they're telling you is true. Like you have to do the work yourself to find out if you're being told the truth.
I agree, but if I've already accepted it, that's different. What I'm saying, when it comes to cross-examiner, right, and his wife telling him there's a dinosaur, he already rejects the fact that there's dinosaurs existing. So he already has a presupposition already. That's why he rejects it. But if he did not have that already, why would he reject it?
What comes with the term of dinosaur, right? What comes with it is my experience reading about dinosaurs, taking class on paleontology and world history and geology. All of that gets boiled into the mix to say, we know that there were dinosaurs. We have evidence. I've been to museums and I've studied the placards that tell me when these animals lived. I have never seen a dinosaur. We don't have any films of dinosaurs. David Attenborough is not narrating The Earth 4, in which he says, see the mighty brontosaurus as it seeks out a mate with its bellowing call. None of that exists. The only place I see them are in awesome Steven Spielberg movies, right? So yes, there is a framework in which I live, and that all of the facts I have ever experienced about dinosaur existence agree and point to something, and that is it would be nigh, not absolutely, but nigh impossible for there to be a dinosaur in my backyard. Importantly, I didn't say I believe there is not a dinosaur in my backyard. What I said is I don't believe my wife when she says there is one. I reject the claim that there is a dinosaur in my backyard. That doesn't mean I am 100% sure that there is no dinosaur, because I could walk out there and maybe she was talking about a toy dinosaur. Maybe somebody did the Jurassic Park and resurrected dinosaurs and it broke loose and it is in our backyard. Who knows? But until I investigate, I'm rejecting that claim, especially from my wife, based on all of my experience. But I technically would reject somebody who said there is absolutely no dinosaur in the backyard, because I haven't investigated. So I'm back at I don't know until I go look. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Hey, Josh, you want to read a Bible passage with me?
Yeah, that's fine.
This is my favorite passage. It's in Deuteronomy 22.
Me in Sunday school. Yeah, that's fine.
It says, if you have a Bible, follow along. It doesn't matter what translation. It's all going to read roughly the same. It says, suppose a man marries a woman, but after going into her, dislikes her. And you know what that means. It says he makes up charges against her, slandering her by saying, I married this woman, but when I lay with her, I did not find evidence of her virginity. So we're tracking so far. He's saying, listen, we had a wedding. I went into her. There was no blood. Didn't appear that she was a virgin. Now we got a problem, right? Well, what happens when you take her to the elders of the city? It says the father of the young woman will say to the elders, hey, I gave my daughter in marriage to this man, but he dislikes her. Now he's made up charges against her, claiming that he didn't find evidence of my daughter's virginity. But here's the evidence. They'll spread out the cloth before the elders of the town, and then the elders of the town will take that man and punish him. Okay, so if the parents produced the cloth from the wedding night, which was customary, so you actually consummated the wedding at the wedding. You did the deed during the wedding party, and there were typically attendants at a tent. They would make a bed, they would lay down the sheet. There was attendants that watched you walk in and watched you come out to verify that there was no funny business with the sheet. And if there was blood on that sheet, then that means she was in fact a virgin. Now listen to what it says here in verse 20. If the charge is true, that evidence of the young woman's virginity was not found, then they will bring the young woman out to the entrance of her father's house, and the men of her town shall stone her to death because she's committed a disgraceful act in Israel by prostituting herself in her father's house. So if the man is caught lying, then he pays a fine. If the woman is caught theoretically lying, then she gets stoned. So I've got two questions. First question is, do you think that's fair?
I don't know. I don't understand the whole context. I mean, I can't just give you full trust, as in to know the scriptures.
You don't have to trust me. The question is,
look it up. He gave you chapter and verse. You could read along. You can literally go to Bible.com or just Google the chapter and verse. I will tell you, I have read this. This is literally what it says. Produce the evidence. If you can't, you are going to die as a woman. So
that's what it says.
And even if you don't trust him that that's actually true, let's just say that is what it says. Let's take that as the hypothetical, which it is true, but let's just take that as the premise. Is that fair?
Keep in mind that the trial is about who's lying.
I'm not sure if I'm even tracking, to be honest.
Woman lies, she dies. Man lies, he gets a fine. Is that fair?
No.
Okay.
Cool. Okay. Second question. The test as to whether or not she was a virgin was whether or not she bled on a sheet. Are you aware that only about 45% of women actually bleed the first time they do the deed, and a small percentage of women aren't even born with hymens? Are you aware of this fact?
No, I'm not too educated on the science of that, no.
Yeah, neither was God. That's why this God is fiction. He doesn't exist. There's no way he created human beings and then didn't know that women didn't always bleed the first time. And if he did know it, then he's the most barbaric creator in the world, because he's charging the Israelites to kill innocent women.
Yeah, I was gonna, as soon as you said he didn't know, I'm like, or he did and it's worse, right? Like it's that old question. You were either incompetent or you're evil. Which one is it, right?
I mean, one can know and not reveal.
I think you're throwing out phrases that have nothing to do with the conversation at this point.
Yeah, I think you're just
Well, you're saying
kind of
that
flailing.
God didn't. You're saying God didn't. Well, the claim is that God didn't reveal modern day scientific.
No.
education.
The claim is God, who supposedly designed women, God created a law that says if women don't bleed on wedding night, you can kill her. God created that law. It has nothing to do with modern science. God said that according to the Bible, right? That's the law. Then people followed the law. I don't know if you've seen videos of stoning. They're not pretty. It's long, takes a lot of time, bloody, it's barbaric. People did this based on this book. So there's two things that are possibly true. God knew that only 45% of women virgins would bleed on their first night and didn't care and was fine with 55% of them being at risk of being stoned to death, or he didn't know or didn't exist. One of those must be true. Either answer is bad, right? Either he didn't exist or the figure of God literally didn't know, or he did know and he's the worst dictator we've ever encountered on earth. Which do you think it is?
I don't know.
Okay. Can I give you some advice?
Is it okay for me to say I don't know?
100%, it is the best answer you can give. 100%, it is the best answer you can give. I applaud you for saying you don't know when you don't know. But I'd like to give you some advice because I can hear some weariness in your voice as you say I don't know, and that weariness has to do with the effort it's taking to think about these things and address them, right? My advice is take it one bit at a time. Go back and start at the basics, right? Start with doing some critical thinking exercises. There are free courses online that teach critical thinking as a topic. They teach logic, and it's not above anybody's head. You can just get back to what is logic, how does it work, and what are the common logical fallacies. Once you do that, then start asking questions of every fact that is asserted, especially the supernatural ones in the Bible, and ask what evidence and logic supports any of this. And when you have questions, come talk to us or talk to both us and a preacher and compare the answers you get and the evidence that you're provided and the questions that are asked by those people. It's not beyond anybody. It's not complicated. It's very simple. The problem is people have been taught to believe that it's very complicated and mysterious, much like if you've seen the movie Wicked with Wizard of Oz. Don't look at the man behind the curtain, right? Just read the Bible, trust the Wizard of Oz, and don't look behind the curtain, because if you do, you'll realize it's a house of cards and it all falls apart. We're not making this up. We've lived through it. Justin was a firm believer. I was never a believer, but I sought truth through my life. We've both come to the same conclusion that there's not a sufficient evidence to say that any of the supernatural claims in the Bible are true.
Right. Yeah. So Josh,
Yeah,
it was good
I'm
talking
not
to you,
sure.
but it sounds like you need to read the text and think on it. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, good talking to you guys. Take care.
Same. I appreciate your candor.
Cheers.
All right.
All right. So we've got a couple of people waiting. Let's grab some super chats, Graham, and then we'll get Hannah in here next. We've got a super chat from Nero
Again.
Thank you so much, Nero. Says, we furries don't F animals, Justin. No. I apologize for mischaracterizing your community.
We should clarify, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but what Justin meant was God was worse than furries.
Yeah, he was.
And I mean that in a humorous way.
And Joshua, thank you for the super chat. Says, Hail Sagan. I agree. Hail Sagan. In fact, watching, or I would say rewatching the series by Carl Sagan when I was in my agnostic phase actually helped move me into atheism, because I kind of came to the realization that, like, there's no evidence for a metaphysical world anywhere. Like, we're not going to die and then go to some metaphysical spiritual realm somewhere. There's just no evidence for it.
I'm holding up a book for Josh. Carl Sagan, The Demon Haunted World. Read this book, Josh. If there's one book you read this month, read this book, Carl Sagan, The Demon Haunted World. It predicts where we are now. He is writing decades ago saying, I am worried when a time when the average citizen of a democracy cannot read a scientific article and understand the science, and they become beholden to the people they trust to get their facts from. He's saying what you are experiencing, Josh. And the way to fight back against it is to educate yourself. I am not kidding when I say take critical thinking courses and to do some research and to talk to people. It is how you fight back, because if you do not educate yourself about how to read science and to practice logical thinking, you are a potential victim to the person that you fall into trust with. And that is what Sagan predicted is happening, and it is happening. Look at what we have. We have somebody as the director of the whole of Health and Human Services saying that you treat measles with cod liver oil from the 1700s. That is the society we live in. Sagan predicted it, but he also gave you a recipe. So please read Sagan. I couldn't agree with the Hail Sagan more.
Definitely. And Bad Religion, 1983. Thank you so much for the $1.99 super thanks, Big W. And Rasta Man, good to see you tonight. Thank you for the 666. Hail Nero. It says, in honor of Justin Graham, it's amazing how SCOTUS is what's giving us the relatively pleasant surprises right now, huh?
Yes, absolutely. I started, I think a month ago, I said my opening statement on the show was, hey, the real risk is if the executive stops obeying court orders. So far, that hasn't happened. We had one today where the court said, hey, you can't deport these people using the Wartime Alien Threat Act. I forget the name of the act that hasn't been used 3 times in history and not for immigrants. You can't do that. And the agency was coy and said, oops, literally one of them, I think it was Rubio, forwarded a message where he was like, oopsie, already deported 300 of them. They're riding a very thin line. So please do keep an eye on that. But the courts so far at every level, not just SCOTUS, have held strong at the plain black and white meaning of the Constitution. And the minute that goes away is the minute we could see the Church of the United States, which is what should matter to this audience particularly. So watch out for that. But yes, and Amy Coney Barrett, a conservative Christian jurist, has proven to be one that is the most thoughtful and most likely to vote on the side of fact. So good for her.
Right, absolutely. And Greg, can you grab our next 3 super chats? Sure. And I'm going to get ready to pull Hannah up.
All right. Sparkly Latte, $4.99. Thank you very much. Please draw Jesus driving off a cross into water. $4.99. I don't know. We'll have to see if Jimmy, he's pretty picky, but I think he can do it. I'm not sure if it would be into or onto water. Shouldn't it be onto water? Next person is Fears Interaction. I'm sorry that you fear interaction. For $10. Nice to see 2 of my absolute favorite atheists hosting. Thank you very much. I live in the Deep South, surrounded by a toxic political views and religiosity, and it's been, quote, one of those weeks. Your sanity is appreciated. Thank you so much for the kind word. You should not fear interaction unless you are talking about those whom surround you. So you are not alone. I was born and raised in Charleston, South Carolina. I am familiar with how things are just different. And there's this underlying unspoken rule in the South. So tread lightly, but be confident that you are not alone. And then finally, we have Frankenstein, member 1 year for $4.99. Need to see Jesus Christ driving from cross into water and into mouth of a whale. So there's an addition there for you, Jimmy. Thank you so much, Frankenstein. That was our next 3.
I'm curious, if Jesus tries diving in the water, does he lack the ability to penetrate the water? Wouldn't that be a hard landing?
Right, like concussion level or death. Yeah, I don't know.
Listen, if Jesus had a concussion, that would explain a lot. They should have had him on protocol.
It's the pigs. Drive the pigs off the... Yeah, it would explain a lot. I agree.
We've got Hannah with us from Mississippi, wants to talk about the argument for motion by Aristotle and Thomas Aquinas. So Hannah, you want to walk through it with us?
This is a classical argument people have for God using basically the idea that due to the structure of how we understand motion, that points to the idea of God. Although it should be noted, this is not strictly a proof of the biblical God, but of the God concept in general. So, I mean, it would be relevant to the atheist experience, even though it wouldn't necessarily be to say the Judeo-Christian conception of God. But could I just go to the premises real quick?
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, well, I had a quick question first, if you don't mind. Hannah, have you called in before under a different name?
Yes.
Okay, just want to. I find it a little disconcerting with the name change. It smells of trying to avoid something, but I'll go with it for now. What you got?
No, I'm not trying to evade anything. Just this is a name that I've recently felt more comfortable with. But
no problem.
Yeah.
No problem. I just wanted to, whenever we see people calling in under different names, there is a high correlation with either trolling or trying to get around something. So I just wanted to put that on the table and let you know that I'm with you. So what are the premises? 1, things are in motion. 2, nothing can move itself. 3, there cannot be an infinite regressive movers. Is that what you're talking about?
So I'll just list down each of the premises. So the first is...
I just did. Do you agree with them? Did you agree with them?
I didn't fully hear them, but I'll just...
Okay, listen real quickly because I don't. Our readers are familiar. Our readers, my God, I'm old. Our listeners are familiar with this. Premise 1, you're talking about. You said argument for motion. So premise 1, things are in motion. 2, nothing can move itself. 3, there cannot be an infinite regress of movers. The conclusion: there must be a first uncaused mover. Is that what you are talking about?
Yes.
Okay. What are your thoughts on that, Hannah? Are you convinced by that?
Well, I'm convinced that fact that there can't be an infinite regress of causes and effects, there would have to be a first cause, and I'm convinced that that first cause would have to be non-spatiotemporal, and typically a non-spatiotemporal first creator of the universe is God, or described as God.
Okay, let's leave the definition of God out of it first and just talk about your premises. So you said there cannot be an infinite regress of cause and effect. 1, that's one assertion you made. 2, you said therefore there must be a first cause, and that's 2. And 3, that cause must be non-spatiotemporal, i.e. outside of space and time. Do I understand you correctly? I just want to make sure I understand you.
Yeah, so all those premises I consider a valid proof.
Okay, so how can you establish that those premises are actually true? And let's start with number 3. You have a cause that is outside space and time, but somehow interacts with something inside space and time. What evidence do you have that is possible?
Well, what do you mean? Like,
I said, what evidence do you have that is in fact possible? Possibility must be demonstrated, right?
Now, what is possible?
That that there can be anything outside of space and time, and B, that such a thing, if it did in fact exist, could interact with something that's inside space and time. So can you demonstrate that either of those is actually possible, much less what actually happened?
Well, yes, we can establish things can be outside of space and time because, as Immanuel Kant proved, in my view, space and time are subjective intuitions of consciousness. So there can be things outside of space and time, since space and time are subjective intuitions according to Kant. And the premise.
Okay, wait.
That's not
okay.
accurate.
A, it's not accurate. B, you're smelling a lot like somebody who likes to come in and what was his name? Jimmy, who just would recite other philosophers and just accept them as proofs or as fact. Justin, what are your thoughts on what level of evidence would you need to know that something could in fact exist outside space and time? Or is the proper answer we don't know if that's even possible? I am talking to Justin right now.
I think the question that I have is not what Immanuel Kant says about space and time. I'd be more concerned with what like actual cosmologists and physicists have to say about space and time. And what we know from science is that something that exists in no place and for no time is indistinguishable from things that don't exist. I also know for a fact that without time, you can't have an acting agent. There's no such thing as acting outside of time, because time is a thing that separates any two things. So like if God created something or God had a thought, that means there was a moment
before the thing.
Yeah, there was a moment in which he didn't do that, and there was a moment in which he did do that. Those are two different moments that are separated by time, which means it doesn't make sense to say God is outside of time unless you believe that your God is equivalent to non-existence. And I agree, your God sounds a lot like non-existence.
Let's stick with that one, Hannah. What do you say to Jimmy's, excuse me, Jimmy, I'm looking at Jimmy, who's busy drawing. What do you say to Justin's point?
Absolutely ridiculous and had no refutation of what my point that space and time are subjective intuitions of consciousness, and that the noumenal realm isn't bound by the phenomenal realm of spatiotemporal.
Okay, we can assert the opposite just as well as you, right?
No,
we could assert the opposite, that space and time are not subjective experiences. They are, in fact, objectively real. Now, where do we go? Where are we?
No, because of the transcendental proof of the a priori intuitions of all cognition.
No, I'm done. As somebody who doesn't want to agree that space and time exist, I don't think is very useful to talk to.
Yeah, wait, I want to make sure I understood what you're saying. Are you suggesting that space and time are just mental concepts, that they don't exist in reality?
I'm saying our phenomenal concept of spatiotemporality are a priori intuitions for all transcendental conditions for all future cognition, and don't.
And I know, like, it makes you sound you want to sound smart by using a bunch of philosophical words, but I asked you a really easy question.
Hold on, I got to do an imitation real quickly. This is you. This is you at McDonald's. All right, I say as the McDonald's guy, would you like fries with that? And you say, well, I experienced the sensation of desire with respect to your proposal of a fried potato product being delivered unto me in this transaction in which I will exchange monetary value for foodstuff, and in which I would later ingest that, and it would give me a sense of pleasure, instead of just saying yes. You get where we're going at? You are using $8 words where 25-cent words are what is appropriate at this point.
I don't agree, because
I know you don't. We've spoken before. Your problem is you answer, would you like fries with that, with 8 paragraphs rather than a yes or a no. Yeah, so and it's because you are hiding something. It is hiding something. I want Justin to go, and then you can ask your question.
Yeah, I still didn't actually get an answer to the question, and I thought it was a pretty easy question. I'm just asking you, are you suggesting that space and time, that they don't actually exist in reality, but they're just subjective experiences that our brain is inventing?
I.e., would you like fries with that?
I'm saying the concepts of space and time as we experience them are not representative of the world as it is in itself.
That's not an answer. That's not an answer to his question. Does space and time exist?
Yeah. Do they exist outside of our minds, outside of our subjective experience? Does space-time exist?
Transcendental space-time is not the same as noumenal space-time.
Okay. He doesn't want fries with that, apparently.
He can't answer. Okay. Well, listen, Hannah, I mean, we really wanted to engage with you, but it sounds like you can't actually engage without doing word salad. So, I mean, if you don't want to engage in a good faith dialogue, we don't have to. I could move on to the next caller. So I'd love to give you one last chance.
Good concept.
So, do you have an answer to the question? Does space-time exist in reality? Like when cosmologists say, hey, space-time is a web, we can observe it, we can measure it, we can interact with it. Do you agree with the scientists when they say this?
If you're asking me, do I think that physical space-time, an extension, could exist? Yes.
I'm asking you, do you believe it does exist in reality? Not could it exist? Is it your position that the observable universe, which includes space-time, that is the reality, that is a thing that actually exists?
Yeah, probably.
Okay, so you don't know. Okay.
Do you accept the proposition as true?
Well, he doesn't know.
Binary, yes or no.
I would say
you either accept the proposition or you don't accept it. It doesn't mean you reject it. Do you accept the proposition is true that space-time exists as most physicists discuss it?
Yeah, I accept the proposition with this. Overwhelming probability. Yes, I do accept it.
Okay, cool. So space-time does exist.
So why did it take us? Why did it take us nearly 7 minutes to get that answer out of you? What is going on? If you're the same person that's been calling all this time, that are, quite frankly, I apologize to our viewers. If you're the same person that's been doing this, why do you do what you do? Why do you call this show? And when you're asked if you want fries with that, you give an 8-paragraph answer rather than speaking like, quite frankly, a normal human being on an average normal human call-in talk show. What is your point? What is your objective here? Because this has been going on nonstop for months and it needs to end. You either have a medical condition and you need to seek help, or you are trolling us, or you are incapable of communicating like a normal human being. I'm sick of this, but I want to give you a chance to explain yourself because I have a morbid curiosity as to what you do with your life. Is this how you speak at work? I don't think it is. So what's going on? Please explain it. Please enlighten us.
I'd love to know, like at work, if they say, "Hey, can you be in the office at 8?" Is that a phenomenological 8 o'clock, or is that a transcendental 8 o'clock?
Time is relative. Yeah.
So first of all, I don't go to work. I'm currently enrolled in community college and studying for school. So I'm studying that, and no, I don't talk to other people in my day-to-day interactions with, you could say, higher-level academic speak. The reason I call in is because I would like to demonstrate why I think religion is important for our culture and proofs of God's existence, like this argument for motion, which we still haven't really fully gotten through. And the second reason, if the question is, why do I speak with terms that are not mud level terms, that are like above mud level, that are higher levels of sophistication, is because I think these are complicated questions and you can't reduce them to like simple binary yes or no. You actually have to look at like what you mean by the concepts you use, and you should be very precise.
Okay. The question was, why are you calling us with this though?
Because I believe I can shape some people's minds to believe in God and to believe religion is useful for society.
Shouldn't you engage with people who want to speak at the level you're speaking and will spend 8 hours defining a word?
I believe you guys are perfectly capable of speaking at the level I speak at.
So, Hannah,
who want to, right? There's simple concepts that if you can't break them down into just simple, like, can we agree on X? Can we agree on Y? You can never progress. And all of your babble speaks of a person who is incapable of breaking it down into simple ways. And if there's one experience I have in working with professionals across all fields, is the experts can break it down into simple terms and speak simply for the purpose of building consensus, of education, of argumentation. That's why I'm asking you about what your purpose is, because you are not achieving your purpose at all by doing this.
And I would just add too, when I was in seminary, we had really good advice on writing sermons. And because there's this idea when you really start learning a lot of Greek and Hebrew, and you're learning some deeper subjects to really dig into biblical studies, you want to be able to utilize some of that during your sermons. But that is a bad temptation to have, because nobody in your church understands a word that's coming out of your mouth. And you're explicitly told that it doesn't matter what you're learning here. If you can't communicate it in terms that is understandable to the level of your congregation, you're wasting everyone's time. So you're coming up on the stage using a bunch of words that you learned in Philosophy 101, assuming that you're sounding smart, but you're not actually communicating to normal people. All you're doing is stroking your own ego, making bad arguments. You're not convincing a single normal human being that you hold to anything more rational than what we're holding on to. So just a bit of advice from my own professors. If you want people to take you seriously and to engage in your arguments, you're better off using terminology that people actually know and can actually engage with. If we sit here and have a 45-minute discussion on metaphysics with you, we're going to lose a whole audience. No one cares. No, not a single atheist has ever been convinced of a God based on these bad arguments that you're providing. Not a single one.
I don't know.
These are arguments that believers make so that they don't feel silly that they believe things.
100%. And I hope if you are in school, you will learn that you will learn that, hey, Philosophy 101 question. Prove to me that chair exists. I pick it up and I hit you in the head with it. That's how I do it, right? It's that simple. It's not, let's talk about the epistemological properties and the arguments and the wherefores. At some point, it boils down to where the rubber hits the road. It is fine to navel gaze in class and to think of all of these possible things. But when it comes down to it, the world that we live in, even though it may be a macro world that's built on a micro world, that world has real effects. People are living, people are dying, people are passing laws that will persecute people. And that's what matters. And we're not going to change minds by sitting here wondering, gee, isn't it mysterious? Wonder if this, wonder if that, and then pretend like, presto, we've just proven that there's a God because we just defined a bunch of terms and made a bunch of arguments, but provided no evidence of anything supernatural. So I would recommend following Justin's advice 100%. I think he got good advice.
Okay. Can we get to the actual argument that I was coming in with and the premises?
No.
Because I don't think
we gave you 10 minutes to answer one yes or no question, and it took you 10 minutes. We're moving on. I suggest. I don't know about you, Justin.
Yeah, I mean it's about 7:30.
Yeah, you've used a lot of times. Like again, from a practical sense, get in and make your elevator pitch. Right? That just. Get in and say what the point is. I even read off the premises, and we could have stuck at that level. Things are in motion. Nothing can move itself. There cannot be an infinite regress. Therefore, uncaused first mover. Everybody's heard it. Everybody knows about it. If it were a winner, there'd be a Nobel Prize, and there'd be God schools in every college, and all that sort of stuff. So we're not doing anything new that hasn't been thought about by brains bigger than us here by just talking with fancy words and avoiding simple questions.
Mm-hmm. But I'm asking how you refute the argument as like questioned.
He told you.
Go ask somebody who cares, to be honest. I'm sorry, but I don't care to speak with somebody who is going to take 10 minutes to answer a yes or no question, who is either incapable or unwilling to be a practical partner in a discussion. It's just maddening. And I regularly, I can talk your pants off at legalese and the philosophy of law and all that shit, but I choose not to because it doesn't do anything except when you are arguing with academics who are going to write persuasive papers that will influence public policy. That's how the world works, right? I can get into debates with my professor who might be persuaded by a subtle point I'm making about, hey, remember that this was the reason that the Magna Carta was signed, and because of blah, 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 blah. And all of a sudden, he writes an article in a law journal that is read by a bunch of judges and a bunch of politicians, and it might influence the world, and it might save a life or make somebody's life better. That's how the world works. It doesn't work by you coming in and using your $8 words in a internet call-in show about atheism. It just doesn't matter. We change minds by being practical and speaking to our audience, and that is a lesson you need to learn.
Yeah, and I don't want to dogpile on you, so I'm sorry for doing that. But like when you came in and you wanted to talk about the argument for motion, Graham and I both know the argument already. He already had the premises pulled up, and he started the conversation by engaging with the premises that you know are part of the argument. And then you decided to obfuscate for 10 minutes. So from our position, what it sounds like is that you just don't want to engage in the actual premises of the argument until we hold your feet to the fire. And now you're saying, oh, I'd like to go back and engage with a little more good faith, but you've given us no reason to believe that you can engage in good faith. And now, unfortunately, we're out of time. We've got to keep the show moving because, everyone here is on a schedule. So Hannah, you're welcome to call back on our next show. We're more than happy to take you, but next time you call back and we're actually starting the conversation by engaging in the premises of the argument you brought up, maybe it's a good idea to actually engage in the argument rather than obfuscate and use word salad.
Good point.
All right. Talk to you next time. And then we're out of calls, but let's get to the super chats. We don't want to forget our wonderful supporters. We've had so many great super chats tonight. We're already at 199, 38 so far. So our challenge has been met.
We get to see some drawings.
Challenge has been met. And nice. Meg has a $9.99 super chat. Says, I'm confused. I thought bestiality was a sin, but the God dude was going to make it happen in the beginning.
I think you have made some news here tonight, Justin. I think people are very curious about what that book says. And that's in Genesis 1. What? 4, 5, 6? So we're right in the beginning. Okay.
Yeah, Genesis chapter 2. You'll find.
Okay, there we go.
God created the animals, and it turned out he couldn't find a mate among the animals.
Oh,
and
my
so
goodness!
He's like, "Oh shoot, we got
everything.
We got to go back to the drawing board." and keep in mind, we're not told that God gave Adam a penis when he decided to make women. Presumably, he already had one.
Right.
Which means he needed to use it for something.
Right.
But anyways, he stopped short of creating a bloody sheet contest for the animals. They were exempt
because he was watching. He didn't need the sheet.
That's right. It was a real voyeur situation. Laren Misha Sidai, I'm so sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly.
This is their second donation tonight. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It says trans people exist, gods do not, and I could not agree more. Graham, can you read a couple of super chats for us?
Sure, absolutely. J. Cal, member of for 1 year, $2 contribution, up to 42% only bleed. Okay, so only 42% of women, something along those lines. It was matching closely with the number you were saying, 45%. So yes, as we said, God is either incompetent, evil, or doesn't exist. Next one is Nero again. Thank you, Nero. You've been so generous. Member for a year, $5. Hannah has explained she is exploring her gender and has politely requested this courtesy. For those who don't know, the rest, let's be better, please. So that explains why I thought this person's called in before. I appreciate the input, Nero. And I hope, as you heard, we were using her preferred pronouns and her preferred name, but that doesn't mean we have to respect her dialogue and arguments and facts. So thank you for that explanation. Unashamed apostate, $2.99, no message, probably because he's an apostate and he doesn't have anything good to say about our dear Lord. God, I can't believe we let these people donate. Benjamin Clodfelter, member for 2 months, $9.99. Thank you very much. Asserting something as being subjective is not evidence of it not being real, nor for the existence of things extant from that subjective thing. I agree. In other words, that which can be asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. Want to get the rest there, Justin?
Yeah, we've got a $10 super chat. Big thank you from M. Melu. Says, really good show today. Well, I really appreciate the kind words, M.
Yeah, thank you.
And Dr. Cal in the house. Good to see you, Reverend.
Reverend Doctor.
Thank you for the 99. Reverend
Kal-El.
Dr. Cal-El. Thank you so much, friend. It's good to see you.
Kal-El, isn't that Superman's father? I think
That's a good
so.
question. I don't
Kal-El.
know.
I think so. Kal space El. Superman or Superman's father, something like that. My nerd cred is going to drop. I didn't know that.
Do we want to show our drawings now or next week?
Ooh, I think we do them now because Jimmy's here now.
He's got them now. Yeah,
we should bring him right now.
I don't have the magic buttons to bring him up. There he is.
It was Superman who was Kal-El, by the way. So there you go.
Folks,
Dr. Reverend Superman.
This was challenging, but I got it. All right. So Jesus with a they, them name tag. Jesus jumping off of a cross into water. And then somebody, after I had drawn that already, asked that Jesus not only be jumping into water, but then into the mouth of a whale. So I had to incorporate that after the fact.
Oh my goodness.
So let's bring it up. Come on.
Is this all one big picture?
Nah, one little picture. Wide shot. Wide shot, everybody. Wide shot. I don't
know if they can do a wide shot for you. You may have to back up.
So Jesus with a they, them name tag.
Wow, that's great.
All right.
In color.
With the stigmata, by the way.
But he could appear in one place more than once. And
of course.
He's across into a river, which goes into a waterfall in which a whale is waiting for him.
Oh, that's amazing.
And
what's in the upper right? Oh.
This is in front of Miranda Wren's Burgers, like Justin mentioned. So Jesus, we know, is a parking lot peddler, peddling his dogma in front of Miranda Wren's Burgers, which is a great place. But anyway, everybody say hello to Jesus. They, them. All right. He's non-binary. They are non-binary.
Wonderful.
And this is going to get auctioned for big bucks eventually someday, folks. So,
I'd buy it.
Yeah. Keep your eyes.
I'm not kidding. I will buy that. That is amazing. I will frame it.
I think we should actually auction those off for a fundraiser.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So thanks for letting me up here and do that. You know, you guys saw my other artwork. I can't show that now. That's for the auction later. But thanks for having me, guys, and let me have fun. And that was a great show. And who was Adam dating when he realized he couldn't find a partner? Like, was he going out with like wolves and camels and stuff, and then realizing like, hey, this isn't working for me?
Yeah, I heard he found a lot of them on Bumblebee.
All right, your nerd cred is back up.
Okay,
your nerd cred's back up. All right, thanks, guys.
Thanks so much for backing us up.
Yeah.
And it's important to also add, like, the God of the Bible is trans as well. The Holy Spirit in Hebrew, ruach, it's a feminine, and the God, the Father, is a spirit, which is sexless, genderless. And Jesus presented one way, but didn't actually have any male chromosomes because he only had the chromosomes from Mary, which means the Trinity is a trans configuration. So, if you believe in God, you shouldn't have any problem with people being trans because the God you're worshiping is trans. So,
so true.
The way it is.
Absolutely. Unless you then no true Scotsman fallacy. Except. Right.
All right. Thank you so much, guys. Remember, the prompt for this week is complete the sentence. It was real petty when God blank. Get your answers in the comments. It might be read at the beginning of next week's episode. And we want to thank you. I'm sorry. We want to thank our backups. There we go. Not you. We thank you as well. We want to thank our backups for helping tonight. Thank you so much to Jimmy Jr. And Jimmy Jr. already gave us feedback, so we won't elicit any more unless he's got something burning.
And another thing.
So thank you so much for being here today, guys. We really appreciate it. And join us in the after show on the Discord.
It was great to be here with you. I really appreciate it. I don't think we had a lot of God conversations, but we had a lot of thinking about God conversations.
Absolutely. I really enjoyed it. And remember, find the Cross Examiner on his YouTube channel. He's not just on AXP, he also has his own channel. I watch his videos, and you can find any of my content on TikTok or YouTube at Deconstruction Zone. So we really appreciate you guys for being here. It's always a pleasure, and we'll see you next week. We're here Sundays at 4:30 p.m. Central Time. So if you've got an argument for God, we're waiting for it.
Peace.
What will it take for you to start opening your eyes, to start questioning the bullshit everyone around you buys? You think it's any of your business what goes on between my
Watch Talk Heathen live Sundays at 1 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTH and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callth.